Lenovo's Legion 5 has been one of the best gaming laptops over the last few years, but they didn't bring it back in 2023, or did they? This is the Legion Slim 5, and apart from having Slim in the name, it's basically an updated Legion 5. So let's find out if it's still a killer laptop worth considering in this review. My Slim 5 has Lenovo's Storm Grey finish, with a metal aluminum lid with anodized finish, but plastic interior and bottom panels. Build quality is alright, quite similar to last year's Legion 5, but there was more keyboard flex than expected when pushing down hard. It feels perfectly fine during normal use though. The metal lid was fairly sturdy, and the hinge felt nice and smooth, even when ripping the lid open fast. The middle of the lid sticks out, making opening very easy, and the screen goes the full way back for sharing. Opening the lid felt a little stiffer compared to other laptops, but it beats the alternative of a loose, wobbly screen. The size is pretty standard for a 16-inch gaming laptop, but I wouldn't say it's slim. The name is kind of misleading there, but the lower spec options are a little thinner than this one. The laptop alone weighs 5.2 pounds or 2.4 kilos, increasing to 7.1 pounds or 3.2 kilos with the 230-watt charger included. Every time I picked it up, I thought it felt heavy for its size. The Legion Slim 5 that I bought has AMD's Ryzen 7 7840HS processor, NVIDIA RTX 4060 graphics, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 16-inch 165Hz screen. But you can get it with different specs with the link below. The keyboard has 4 zones of RGB backlighting, but there's also an all-white option. All keys and secondary functions get lit, and you can hold the function key and press spacebar to cycle through 3 lighting profiles. But the lighting looks a little dim. You can customize these through Lenovo's Vantage software, and this is where you can adjust key brightness between 2 levels. There aren't any shortcut keys to control brightness like most other laptops. Typing on the keyboard felt good, pretty much the same as any other Lenovo laptop. There's just a subtle clicky feel. The plastic touchpad works fine, but felt a little loose compared to other recently tested laptops like the G14 and Blade 14. As for ports, the left side has 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C ports and a 3.5mm audio combo jack. No mention of USB 4 here. The right has an SD card slot and a switch for disconnecting the camera. The rest is on the back. From left to right, we've got 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-A ports, Gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 2.1, and the power input on the right. There are port icons above the rear ports, which makes it easier to plug cables in without turning the laptop around. But they do not light up like the higher tier Slim 7. It would have been nice to have a USB Type-A port on one of the sides, as they're only on the back. Lenovo's spec sheet lists that one of the Type-C ports can be used to charge the laptop with up to 140 watts. Unfortunately, I don't have Lenovo's special 140-watt charger, and we weren't able to get it charging with a regular 100-watt charger, so it doesn't seem to be backwards compatible with that. Both Type-C ports do have DisplayPort support though, so you can connect screens. The one closest to the back always connects to the Radeon integrated graphics, whether Optimus is on or off. But the one closest to the front always connects directly to the NVIDIA discrete graphics. HDMI always connected directly to the NVIDIA graphics too. And we confirmed it could run our LG B9 TV at 4K 120Hz 10-bit with G-Sync. Getting inside requires removing 10 Phillips head screws, all the same length. It was very easy to pry open compared to older Legion laptops. I'll leave a link to these tools I use below. Inside we've got the battery down the front, 2 memory slots just above in the middle, the installed SSD on the right, and a second spare M.2 slot on the left, with a Wi-Fi 6E card just below. The Wi-Fi speed was decent for a MediaTek card, basically matching the Intel card in the higher tier Legion Slim 7i. The installed 512GB PCIe Gen 4 SSD was performing nicely for both reads and writes, but the SD card slot was extremely slow. My V90 card is capable of more than 200 megabytes a second. The card does not click in and sticks out, so be careful not to bump it. The upgradability score is basically as good as it can be for a laptop this size. Unlike the higher tier but thinner Slim 7, there is no soldered memory, and and I confirmed both M.2 slots can fit a double-sided 4TB SSD with chips on both sides. The speakers are found towards the front on the left and right sides. They sound okay, but muffled at higher volume levels with barely any bass. There was almost no wrist rest vibration, but the speakers were popping at higher levels initially. But this went away and never happened again. I couldn't reproduce it on camera. The latency mon results weren't great, which has been the case with most laptops this year. My Slim 5 has a 4-cell 80Wh battery, but it's also available with a smaller 60Wh option, so expect less runtime with that. You can enable adaptive refresh rate in Vantage to help save battery. This will automatically lower the screen's refresh rate to 60Hz when you unplug the charger, which is why it flashes black. And it goes back up to 165Hz when you plug back in. You can also enable conservation mode in Vantage. This limits the maximum charge level between 75 and 80%, which helps the battery last longer. You can't use it at the same time as rapid charge, and you've also got the option to charge the battery slower overnight. It lasted for 8 hours and 8 minutes in my usual YouTube video playback test. A great result. Laptops with AMD Ryzen processors generally tend to last longer than Intel laptops in this test, though it was beaten by last year's Legion 5 with the same sized battery, and neither can compete against Apple's smaller MacBook at the top. Let's check out thermals next. It's got 2 fans with heat pipes shared between the CPU and GPU and uses a phase change thermal compound. There are air intake vents directly above the fans and vents at the back above the keyboard. Air gets exhausted out towards the back on the left and right sides and out from the left and right corners on the back. The Vantage software lets us change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are quiet, balance, performance, and custom. Balance mode has an optional AI setting which is meant to provide an optimal experience in supported games. Think best performance without the fans going too loud. Custom mode gives you some control over fan speed, or you can just set the fans to max, as well as some control over CPU and GPU, thermal and power limits for finer tuning. We've also got the option of enabling a GPU overclock through Vantage 2. It works in all modes except quiet mode as long as the charger is connected. You can customize it through here, but we've left it default anytime it was tested. As I figure it's a simple one-click option for a performance boost, all our testing has been done with it on. You can also press the function and Q shortcut to change between all performance modes except custom. The color of the power button changes so you can easily tell which is currently in use, as noted here. Performance and custom modes cannot be used when running on battery power. The internal temperatures were fine at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. CPU temps were warmest in performance mode, and changing to custom mode with the fans going faster and louder didn't really change things. Interestingly, closing the lid and running in a docked scenario was a little cooler than lid open. But the biggest cooling improvements came from adding a cooling pad. The one I test with is linked below. These are the clock speeds during the same tests. Performance on the CPU and GPU was basically the same with the lid closed and open, which again confirms no problem docking it. Although custom mode had the same temps as performance mode, the CPU was able to clock almost 100 MHz higher over all 8 cores. Using a cooling pad instead was about the same, but cooling pad plus max fans allowed the processor to boost the most. Performance mode appears to cap the CPU at 45 watts, but once we add more cooling capacity with the cooling pad, it's able to go higher. Custom mode with the fans maxed out went the highest, and the GPU never went above 103 watts in this test. The NVIDIA control panel says that the RTX 4060 can run up to 140 watts with dynamic boost, but we're never actually going to see that in most games due to NVIDIA's voltage limit. Notebook Check recently published their review of the Slim 5 and noted that the RTX 4060 graphics runs between 60 and 100 watts, and 100 watts as the maximum also matches Lenovo's official documentation as well. But as we just saw, my Slim 5 had no problem problems running higher than this, so I'm guessing Lenovo might have since increased it in an update. I did not see anything on Lenovo's website about this when looking for recent updates though. I reached out to Lenovo but haven't heard back yet, so I'll update the pinned comment below if I do hear anything. But if I had to guess, based on the thermal results from this laptop, I don't see any reason why it can't sustain 100 watts on the GPU. There wasn't really a performance difference in games between performance and custom modes. Custom mode could clock slightly higher on the CPU due to the faster and louder fans, so maybe that's why the 1% low was slightly ahead, but that's a minor margin of error difference. I'm guessing the AI mode doesn't support this game as there was no difference, but I can't find a list of games where it does work. The CPU power level can run higher when the GPU isn't active, like in Cinebench, where around 84 watts was possible with the 7840HS in custom mode. It's a good result compared to other 8-core laptops, basically matching the higher tier Ryzen 9 7940HS in two smaller 14-inch laptops. The 7940HS only has a 100MHz higher boost clock speed, which is why the single core score is a little higher. But apart from that, the 7840HS in the Slim 5 is much the same, especially when it comes to multi-core performance. Performance is still quite good even after unplugging the charger and instead running purely off of battery power. Performance and custom modes cannot be used without the charger, so this is balance mode. The single core score is basically the same, but it's now the best multi-core result on battery from any 8-core AMD laptop tested. It's close to Apple's M2 Max, which costs a lot more money and is known for performing the same with and without the charger connected. Most laptops I test are in the low 30°C range on the keyboard at idle. The middle of the keyboard was only slightly above this, but the area around the spacebar was warmer. It's warmer with the stress test running as expected, but the WASD area only felt a little warm, and the hotspot near the spacebar didn't feel hot. It's a little cooler in balance mode as the fans are going faster now, and again not hot to the touch despite that warmer looking spacebar area. It's warmer in the higher performance mode as CPU and GPU power levels are higher. The spacebar area did feel a little warm now, but the WASD area and wrist rest was fine. It's cooler in custom mode with the fans maxed out, but this also makes it louder too. Let's have a listen. The fans were silent most of the time when sitting there idle, but would randomly turn on over time, which is why I included two idle results. Custom mode was the loudest with the fans maxed out, as expected, but I didn't expect the cooling pad to be louder than without it. Ideally, the cooling pad lowers temps, resulting in the laptop's fans running slower and quieter, so this explains why the cooling pad temps lowered so much. Unlike last year's Legion 5, this year's Slim 5 uses a taller 16x10 screen, so there are more pixels vertically, which results in less bottom chin. Personally, I really prefer this, but in some regions, it looks like the 2560x1600 resolution is the only option. And that's probably going to be more of a struggle for the RTX 4050 configuration. But there is also a lower tier 1920x1200 screen option in some regions. That lower tier screen is only rated for a 45% NTSC color gamut, which is not going to look very good. Out of these three options, I've got the middle tier 165Hz screen. Overall, I think this screen looks good. It's colourful enough for gamers, but I'd want better for content creation. Although it's rated at 300 nits, ours gets brighter and maxed out at 350 nits. But this will vary depending on the panel lottery, aka luck of the draw. The brightness also dips down quickly at higher levels, meaning it's dimmer than most other laptops at most lower brightness levels. Backlight bleed was fine in my unit, but this will vary between panels. The overdrive mode in the Vantage software can be enabled to lower screen response time. It was on by default, and I measured an average gray to gray response time of 4.2 milliseconds. But there was a little overshoot and undershoot detected. You've got the option to remove that, but at the expense of a slightly slower response time by disabling the overdrive mode. The result is quite good compared to others. One of the faster 2560 by 1600 165Hz panels tested, and closer to faster 240Hz panels. But again, like the color gamut and backlight bleed, this can vary a bit depending on the panel lottery. The total system latency is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in CSGO. It's a little slower compared to other laptops with similar specs and slower screens, like Lenovo's cheaper Lock 16 or Acer's Helios Neo 16. Mine has a 1080p camera above the screen, but there's also a 720p option, and it does not have IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. The privacy shutter switch on the right can be used to disconnect the camera. Here's how the camera and microphones look and sound, and this is what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard. The Slim 5 has a mux switch. You can set the GPU working mode in Vantage to DGPU mode, but you have to reboot to apply that. It also has Advanced Optimus though, so you can instead leave Vantage on hybrid mode and make the change through the NVIDIA control panel without rebooting. And G-Sync is available when Optimus is disabled. Now let's find out how well the Slim 5 performs in games and see how it compares against other laptops. We've tested with these settings for best results. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested the same on all laptops, and the Slim 5 is shown by the red highlight. It's in line with a bunch of other RTX 4060 gaming laptops tested, which is expected as the 4060 maxes out at about 100 watts in most games, but it's a little behind most others at the higher 1440p resolution, though not by any sort of meaningful difference. The 4060 is 18% faster compared to last year's 3060 here, but we could also improve the smoothness of the gameplay on the 4060 by using frame generation. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the game's benchmark, and at 1080p, the Slim 5 was ahead of the smaller Asus Zephyrus G14 and Lenovo's lower tier Lock 15 and 16. The Locks do have lower GPU power limits, but again, it shouldn't matter much due to Nvidia's voltage limit. The cheaper Lock models are still behind at the higher 1440p resolution, but only by like 3 to 5 FPS, nothing major, while the best 4060 was only 5% faster, so basically no major difference that you'd be likely to notice when playing. The 1% low result was great in control at 1080p, similar to the Strix G16, so fewer dips in performance compared to most other 4060 laptops. And then it's the same sort of deal at the higher 1440p resolution, with both the Slim 5 and Strix G16 offering the best 1% lows out of the 4060 laptops. The average FPS from the Slim 5 basically matches the higher tier and more expensive 4070 in MSI's smaller Stealth 14, as that has a lower GPU power limit, but the other 4070s see more of a boost. Here are the 3D Mark results for those that find them useful. Now for some content creator tests. Nothing really stood out in the Puget Systems benchmarks. The Slim 5 was typically performing in line with other similarly spec'd laptops in these tests. Interestingly, the Slim 5 scored the best in Blender out of any 4060 laptop so far, and was closer to the lowest 4070 results than the next best 4060. We've also tested SpecView Perf, which tests out various professional 3D workloads. Lenovo's BIOS gives you more customization compared to Asus, Gigabyte, or Razer laptops, but there's nowhere near as much tuning potential compared to what MSI offers in their advanced BIOS. Linux support was tested with an Ubuntu 23.04 live CD. By default, the keyboard, touchpad, camera, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and speakers all worked. Keyboard shortcuts to adjust volume, screen brightness, keyboard lighting profile, and performance mode all worked. An excellent result. However, in 2 separate boot attempts, the laptop would turn off after adjusting screen brightness. But maybe that would work better with newer graphics drivers. Live CDs aren't exactly known for having up-to-date software. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the link below for updates and current sales. And if the Slim 5 does have a good sale, we'll be sure to add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the latest sales. So make sure you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. At the time of recording, the configuration I've tested here goes for $1,530 US. But there was actually a nice sale about a week ago for $380 off, which is definitely much more attractive. We actually had this listed on the GamingLaptop.deals website, so again, check it out often to find the best deal. Anyway, at full price, you can save $180 on the Ryzen 5 config, which has 6 cores instead of 8, and a lower quality screen. All things considered, Lenovo's Legion Slim 5 is a great gaming laptop that I've got no problems recommending, especially if you can find it with that sale price. There are some minor problems, but nothing in life is perfect, and none of the problems were serious. It's basically a new Legion 5, but for some reason, they decided to add Slim into the name. Kinda weird when this is nowhere near what I would consider to be slim. But slightly misleading name aside, the Slim 5 is still worth considering as a mid-range gaming laptop. It is missing some of the higher tier Slim 7's nice-to-have features, like the Slim 7 actually being thinner and lighter, its bigger 99-watt-hour battery, the all-metal design, the glass touchpad, and perky RGB lighting to name a few. But the Slim 7 also costs more money too. Those extras don't come for free. The Slim 5 still hits all the core features needed for a great gaming experience, including Mux Switch, Advanced Optimus, G-Sync, and good CPU and GPU performance, all while costing less money than the higher tier Slim 7. But if any of those other features do sound like they're worthwhile to you, then check out this video next, where I've reviewed the Legion Slim 7 in depth. Yeah, it does cost more, but you do get some nice extra features too, so I'll see you in that one next.